Eagle Enterprises. Thank you very much, Scott, for joining us on the program. We now move on to our next story, where China's top diplomat Wang Yi has warned the European Union against pursuing confrontation following sharp criticism from the Vice President of the European Commission, Kaja Kallas, during their high-level meeting in Brussels. Wang had told Kallas that despite disagreements, China and the EU should not view each other as adversaries. He insisted that Europe's security challenges have nothing to do with China, adding that Beijing is not and will not be a source of instability. But Kallas pushed back. In blunt remarks before the talk, she accused China of enabling Russia's war in Ukraine by propping up Moscow's economy. She also cited cyberattacks, election interference and unfair trade practices as threats to European security and prosperity. She said, quote, "Enabling war in Europe while seeking closer ties with Europe is a contradiction Beijing must address." Beijing, while calling itself neutral in the Ukraine conflict, continues to offer diplomatic and economic support to Moscow, raising alarms in Western capitals. Wang attempted to distance China from Washington's growing trade and tariff disputes with the EU, saying China is not the United States. The talks come ahead of a key EU-China summit in Beijing later this month. Kallas reiterated calls for more balanced trade ties and warned against China's export restrictions on critical minerals like rare earths. The two sides also discussed the Israel-Iran conflict, the Iran nuclear deal, tensions over Taiwan and human rights concerns in China. Wang will continue his European tour with stops in Germany and France in the coming days, as both sides attempt to stabilize a tense but vital relationship. We are joined by Ross Feingold, who is a political risk analyst located in Taipei, Taiwan, to discuss this in further detail. Ross, thank you very much for joining us on the program. Does China's warning to the EU really signal a desire for better ties, or is Beijing just trying to deflect blame for its support in Russia? We know that Beijing is a staunch supporter of Moscow. We saw the images coming out of the Red Square on VE Day. President of China and the President of Russia sat next to each other smiling. Does this signal a desire for better ties with Europe, Ross?
Well, the trajectory of China's relationship with Europe is certainly in flux at the moment. There was a period within the last 5 years where Europe, and the European Union specifically, were voicing a lot of criticisms of China over a range of issues that includes trade as well as human rights, China's policies in Hong Kong, and even China's policies towards Taiwan. But with the trade friction with the United States, we now see that European countries are not as critical of Europe. They're not as critical of China anymore, and they're talking about improving the trade relationship with China.
Yes, and Ross, what are your thoughts about Europe's support? Europe's support for Beijing, given Beijing's support for Moscow. Do you think there can be any real development there when when Europe's enemy number one is Russia, along with one of China's closest allies?
That's a really interesting question, and perhaps the European countries are hoping for a way out of that conundrum, which would be for President Trump to somehow bring about a ceasefire between Ukraine and Russia. If a ceasefire were to happen, especially if it was an extended one, the challenge you just described for European countries would kind of disappear, because China would no longer be supporting a Russia that's at war with Ukraine. There would be a ceasefire. So I would say that situation is definitely something that the Europeans are waiting to see what happens. But at the same time, again, they're still interested in pursuing more trade with China, notwithstanding China's support for Russia over the past 3+ years.
Ross, thank you. You are staying with us. We move on to our next development. US President Donald Trump has announced a significant